The Field Guide to Bigfoot and Other Mystery Primates is a book released on March 1st, 2006, written by Lauren Coleman and Patrick Hugh, and published by Anomalist Books. It serves as a comprehensive study of the surprisingly vast variety of mysterious primates reported by eyewitnesses across the globe. Creatures that, for one reason or another, remain unrecognized by mainstream science. This fully illustrated volume includes references, range maps, and footprint examples from earlier editions, along with complete index and a 2006 preface that updates readers on discoveries and developments made since its original release. Now, I personally picked this book up sometime around late 2023 or early 2024. At that point, it was only my second Bigfoot-related book that I owned, and it came during a time when I was rediscovering my interest in the subject of cryptozoology. I had kind of drifted away from the subject in the late 2010s, but after COVID, something pulled me back into it. I don't know what it was exactly, maybe just curiosity, maybe nostalgia perhaps, but the interest came back strong. Before this, I had already read Coleman's True Giants: Is Gigantopithecus Still Alive? So when I saw this book, its title, its cover, it immediately caught my attention. It felt like a natural step. So I picked it up and dove in. So let's get right into it. Interestingly, while this edition was released in 2006, the original version of this book actually came out in 1999. And while it did receive praise, it also faced a fair amount of criticism and backlash, mainly due to the lack of concrete physical evidence and the reliance on eyewitness accounts, especially for some of the more extreme cases like giant hominids. This newer edition attempts to address some of that by including updated information, additional sources, and a more refined presentation overall. Now, obviously, any subject like Bigfoot, or really anything that falls outside the boundaries of mainstream science, is going to be met with skepticism, if not outright dismissal. That's just the nature of how academia and modern science tends to operate. If it can't be measured, tested, or repeated under controlled conditions, it's often pushed aside. And whether you agree with that or not, it's part of the landscape you have to navigate when exploring topics like these. Personally, though, I really enjoyed this book. What stood out to me the most was the sheer range of cases and creatures discussed. It's not just Bigfoot, it's an entire spectrum of mysterious hominids and primate-like beings from different cultures and regions. Cases like the Big Grey Man of Ben Macdui in Scotland, or even the legendary Grendel from the Beowulf story, which some argue may have roots in real encounters that were later mythologized. Whether you see these as folklore, misidentifications, or something more, the stories themselves are undeniably fascinating. But one aspect of the book that really grabbed my attention, and something that wasn't really explored as deeply in True Giants, was the classification system used to categorize these beings. For example, the neo-giants, quote-unquote, which includes Bigfoot, are considered more recent or modern forms possibly descended from larger ancestral species like Gigantopithecus. Then you have the True Giants, which refer to the ancient, massive hominids often described as being over the 10-foot range, more human than ape, but far larger, more primitive than us. I talked about this in the True Giants book previously. On the opposite ends, there are the proto-pygmies, smaller hominids similar to what some might associate with the Homo floresiensis, or like the orang pendek of Indonesia, for example. And then you even got into more unusual categories like the mer beings, which are described as aquatic or marine-based humanoid entities. There are plenty more classifications discussed in the book, but honestly going through all of them would take forever, and part of the fun is discovering them for yourself. So, one of my personal favorite accounts in the book is the story of the Tano Giant from the British Columbia, Canada, dating back to June of 1965. The story goes that two prospectors, Ron Welch and his brother, came across a series of massive, fresh tracks in the snow, each one about 24 inches long and 12 inches wide. The stride alone was roughly double that of a human. Alongside the footprints were deep grooves, suggesting that the creature may have been dragging something. The tracks led them to a frozen lake with a single large hole in the ice. As they moved around the lake, they spotted the creature itself standing across them, not far away. Instead of panicking, they just stopped, sat down, had a cigarette, ate a chocolate bar, and one of them even sketched the thing. Using nearby trees for scale, they estimated the creature to be anywhere from 10 to 14 feet tall. It had a massive broad frame, auburn-colored hair, and long arms that extended below its knees. Its hands were described as large and paddle-shaped, with distinct yellow colorization. And the strangest part? The creature didn't move, not once. Eventually, the men left, and when they came back later, it was gone. Only more tracks remained. Stories like that are all throughout this book, detailed, vivid, and honestly pretty unsettling. The kind of accounts that make you stop and think, even just for a minute. And I'll be real, reading through some of these made me question whether I'd even want to encounter something like this myself. There's always been that eerie feeling, at least for me, when you're out in the woods, especially late in the day or at night, that you're being watched. And books like this, they don't exactly help with that feeling. At the end of the day, I can't prove any of this. I don't have first-hand evidence. All I can do is explore what's been documented. Books like these. Older reports, archived accounts, and unfortunately a lot of these sources are becoming harder and harder to, track down. I personally tried to trace some of these stories back to their original newspaper articles or early online records, and more often than not, I hit a dead end. It's frustrating. It almost feels like pieces of the puzzle are just disappearing. Now, whether that's due to time, poor preservation, or something more intentional, that's a whole different conversation. But it does make you wonder. And yeah, maybe that's where the conspiracy side of things start creeping in, because you're dealing with a subject like this, one that's been ridiculed, ignored, or brushed aside for so long. It's hard not to feel like there's more going on beneath the surface. But putting all that aside for a moment, if there's one thing I really appreciate about the book, it's this. The idea that these beings, Bigfoot, giants, little people, aren't just isolated to one region or one culture. They appear in stories, legends, and eyewitness accounts all across the globe. Different names, different descriptions, but similar themes. And to me, that's not coincidental. You can believe it's folklore, you can believe it's misidentification, or you can believe there's some truth behind it all. But the fact remains, these stories have persisted for generations, across continents, across time, and that alone makes it worth paying attention to. So, whether you're a believer, a skeptic, or somewhere in between, I'd say this book is absolutely worth checking out if you have any interest in the subject to begin with. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, this deep dive into The Field Guide to Bigfoot and Other Mystery Primates by Lauren Coleman and Patrick Hughes. Catch me again next time. See you guys later. Mr. K out.